For centuries, the myth has persisted. Bigger must mean better. From cultural symbols to modern media, size is often treated as the ultimate marker of power and desirability. At Intimate Wisdom, we unravel this belief with science and empathy, revealing a truth that is far more complex and far more human. In this episode of Intimate Wisdom, we ask the timeless question, does bigger really mean better? By examining scientific data, average sizes across the globe, and the unique realities of those at the extremes, we uncover how size influences intimacy, confidence, and perception. Beyond measurements lies the deeper story of connection, compatibility, and what truly defines satisfaction in human relationships. Part 1. The question of size, a cultural obsession. For centuries, the size of the penis has been a subject that stirs curiosity, fascination, and even anxiety. Unlike other aspects of anatomy, this particular measurement has been given outsized cultural weight, often treated as a symbol of masculinity, power, or sexual ability. In many societies, myths and stories have reinforced the idea that a larger size equates to greater virility or desirability. Ancient fertility symbols, medieval tales of potency, and modern media all echo this theme. From adolescent locker room banter to adult conversations, size is frequently mentioned, sometimes humorously, sometimes judgmentally, but rarely neutrally. Popular culture has only magnified the fixation. Films, advertising, and especially pornography tend to portray size as a defining feature of sexual success. The emergence of phrases like big dick energy reflects how deeply this notion has seeped into everyday language, equating anatomy with charisma and confidence. Yet, despite its cultural visibility, size is seldom examined through a rigorous scientific lens. What exists is more folklore than fact. Psychologists and sexual health professionals often observe how these cultural messages shape self-perception. Many men grow up internalizing the belief that bigger is better, leading some to feel inadequate if they fall below imagined ideals. Surveys have repeatedly shown that a significant proportion of men underestimate their own size relative to averages. Interestingly, many women and partners report that size is not the most important factor in satisfaction, highlighting a disconnect between perception and reality. The recurring question, does bigger really mean better, persists because it blends curiosity with insecurity. On one hand, there is genuine interest in human diversity and how it influences sexual function. On the other, there is the weight of societal expectation. Rarely do discussions acknowledge the full picture, the role of compatibility, emotional intimacy, and the limitations of human anatomy. This is where science becomes essential. By moving past anecdote and cultural stereotype, researchers can provide clarity. Statistical studies reveal not only what is average, but also how unusual extremes actually are. Medical research shows that anatomy alone is not a reliable predictor of sexual performance, fertility, or relationship quality, and psychological studies highlight that self-esteem and communication play larger roles in satisfaction than any specific measurement. Setting the stage with these insights matters. It allows us to shift from myth to evidence, from insecurity to understanding, exploring the real numbers behind size averages, variations, and statistical outliers provides a foundation for addressing the question fairly. It also underscores the truth that while society may fixate on size, human intimacy is far more complex and far less dependent on any single physical dimension. Part 2. Scientific reality, averages, extremes, and perspective. When size is measured objectively, the data tells a much clearer story than cultural rumor. Large-scale medical studies conducted across continents consistently show that the average erect penis length falls between 13 and 15 centimeters, 5.2 to 5.8 inches. Girth averages about 11 to 12 centimeters, 4.3 to 4.7 inches. These figures represent the majority of men worldwide and form what statisticians call the normal distribution. On a bell curve, most individuals cluster around the center, with far fewer appearing at the extremes. At the smaller end of the spectrum is the condition known as micropenis, clinically defined as an erect length of less than 7.3 centimeters, 2.9 inches. It is exceedingly rare, occurring in approximately 0.14% of men. Its causes are often linked to hormonal factors or developmental differences, and medical professionals emphasize that, while uncommon, it does not preclude a fulfilling sexual life with proper understanding and adaptation. On the other end are those who measure well above average. Only about 2.5% of men have lengths exceeding 18 to 20 centimeters, 7 to 8 inches. This means that the so-called exceptional sizes often celebrated in media or adult entertainment are not representative of most men. In fact, statistically speaking, they are as rare as the condition of micropenis, though the cultural narratives surrounding them are very different. Where one extreme may be stigmatized, the other is frequently romanticized, yet both lie outside the statistical norm. The implications of these numbers are significant. First, they show that the vast majority of men fall within a healthy, functional range. Second, they highlight how media portrayals create unrealistic expectations. For example, pornography disproportionately showcases actors at the extreme upper end of size, reinforcing the illusion that such measurements are common or necessary for satisfaction. This distorts perceptions for both men and their partners. Medical research also reminds us that anatomy does not operate in isolation. Sexual satisfaction depends on multiple factors: arousal, communication, emotional closeness, and technique. While size may influence certain aspects of physical compatibility, it is not a determinant of fertility or relational happiness. Urologists often counsel patients that average size is fully capable of enabling reproduction and fulfilling intimacy. Looking across continents further underscores the theme of diversity. Average sizes vary slightly by region, with reports suggesting higher averages in parts of Africa, around 15 to 16 centimeters. Moderate averages in Europe and the Americas, 13 to 15 centimeters. And somewhat lower averages in Asia, 11 to 13 centimeters. Yet these variations, though often sensationalized in media, remain relatively modest in biological terms. The takeaway is that human anatomy is naturally diverse, and no single number defines health or adequacy. In perspective, the science answers the central question clearly: bigger does not inherently mean better. Extremes exist but are rare. Averages are well documented, and satisfaction is shaped more by connection and compatibility than centimeters. Understanding this reality can help dismantle myths, reduce anxiety, and encourage healthier, more confident conversations about sexuality. Part 3. Cultural perceptions and social stereotypes. Throughout history, penis size has been exaggerated and mythologized far beyond its biological relevance. In modern times, popular culture, pornography, and mass media have continued to inflate the value of being well endowed, often portraying it as the ultimate marker of masculinity, desirability, or sexual skill. From movie jokes to internet memes, size is treated less as a private detail and more as a cultural symbol. This constant reinforcement conditions men to believe that their self-worth can be measured in centimeters, while partners are taught to expect that larger always equals better. The pornography industry plays a particularly significant role in shaping these unrealistic expectations. Actors are frequently selected for their above-average size, creating a distorted representation of what is normal. Viewers, especially younger men who lack real-world experience, may come to believe that extremes are the standard. This disconnect fosters anxiety, body image concerns, and unnecessary comparisons. Instead of recognizing that averages represent the majority, many men feel inferior for falling short of exaggerated ideals. Adding to the cultural pressure is the rise of the phrase, big dick energy. Originally coined as a playful expression, it quickly became shorthand for supreme confidence, charm, and presence. Yet the term also reinforces the idea that personality traits can be directly tied to anatomy. Men who do not see themselves reflected in this stereotype may feel lacking, while those who do have larger dimensions may feel pressured to embody a confidence they do not naturally possess. The concept equates self-esteem with body measurements, which is both scientifically unfounded and emotionally damaging. Psychological research consistently shows that sexual satisfaction and relationship quality depend far more on emotional connection, communication, and mutual respect than on physical size. Surveys highlight that most women and men value qualities such as attentiveness, intimacy, and skill over anatomical extremes. In fact, when asked directly, many women rank size far below factors like trust, affection, and emotional compatibility. This suggests that cultural narratives about size are not only misleading but also misaligned with real human experiences. The gap between media portrayals and lived reality creates unnecessary stress. Men who fall within the statistically average range, which is the vast majority, may still perceive themselves as inadequate because they fail to match distorted images. Conversely, men at the higher end of the spectrum may struggle with objectification, where their identity is reduced to a single physical characteristic. Both extremes reveal how harmful stereotypes can be, whether they glorify or stigmatize. Ultimately, Cultural obsession with size reflects more about society's fixation on symbols than about sexual fulfillment. The challenge is to reframe the conversation away from numbers and toward qualities that truly matter: empathy, compatibility, and emotional presence. By doing so, we can reduce stigma, ease anxieties, and remind people that intimacy is defined not by anatomy but by connection. Part 4. Challenges of being above average. While society often glorifies men with larger than average anatomy, the lived experience can be far more complicated. From a medical perspective, unusually large size introduces physical risks and practical limitations. The average vaginal depth is approximately 3 to 3.5 inches unaroused. And although it can expand with arousal, there are natural limits. When penetration involves a penis that is significantly longer, discomfort and even injury become possibilities. Cases of tearing, bruising, or bleeding are not unheard of. And in rare situations, medical attention is required. What might appear to be an advantage in theory can, in practice, cause pain rather than pleasure. Beyond physical concerns, the psychological impact of being visibly different is significant. From adolescence onward, individuals with exceptional size may attract unwanted attention in locker rooms or social settings. Rumors about sexual activity often circulate, regardless of whether they are true, creating reputations that can feel intrusive and isolating. In adulthood, the problem shifts toward objectification. Instead of being valued for their personality, talents, or emotional qualities, men may find themselves reduced to a stereotype. This constant focus can erode self-esteem, leaving them feeling misunderstood and disconnected from peers. Practical realities also create difficulties. Finding condoms that fit properly is a recurring challenge. Standard products are designed to accommodate the vast majority of men, but when stretched beyond their intended limits, the risk of breakage or slippage increases. This not only compromises safety but also heightens stress during intimacy. Specialty products do exist but are less accessible, requiring advanced planning rather than spontaneity. Similarly, certain sexual positions that work well for most couples may become uncomfortable or impractical, forcing partners to adapt and experiment. Some men use depth-limiting devices, such as rings or buffers, to prevent discomfort for their partners. While effective, these tools highlight how size can transform intimacy into a logistical puzzle. Social interactions add another layer of complexity. While some may assume that being larger brings endless admiration, many men privately admit they would prefer to be closer to average. The constant stares, jokes, or comments can feel intrusive. Instead of empowerment, they experience alienation, wishing for normalcy and privacy rather than spectacle. In this sense, the social cost of being different can outweigh the supposed benefits. Together, these challenges reveal that being above average is not an unqualified advantage. Medical risks, practical obstacles, and psychological pressures combine to create a reality that is often overlooked by cultural stereotypes. The truth is that extremes at either end of the spectrum, whether unusually small or unusually large, present their own unique difficulties. By recognizing these realities, we can better understand why size should not be equated with worth or satisfaction. Ultimately, intimacy thrives not on extremes but on communication, adaptability, and mutual respect between partners. Part 5. Size and sexual satisfaction. When it comes to sexual satisfaction, science provides a clear answer. Size plays a role far smaller than most cultural myths suggest. Numerous studies across psychology, urology, and sexology consistently show that fulfillment in intimate relationships depends far more on communication, trust, and emotional closeness than on any anatomical measurement. While differences in size may introduce specific challenges or adjustments, they rarely define the quality of a person's sexual life. One of the strongest predictors of satisfaction is communication. Partners who openly discuss their needs, preferences, and boundaries tend to report higher levels of intimacy and enjoyment. Whether a penis is larger, smaller, or close to average, the ability to talk honestly about comfort levels, desired practices, and potential difficulties creates a sense of safety that enhances the experience. In contrast, silence or embarrassment often leads to misunderstandings, discomfort, and dissatisfaction regardless of size. Mutual consent and respect are equally central. Research underscores that a sexual encounter is most fulfilling when both partners feel empowered to say yes or no freely. If one partner feels pressured or uncomfortable, satisfaction decreases dramatically, even if physical compatibility appears ideal. Size does not override the importance of agency and emotional security. Skill and creativity also matter. Sexual pleasure is multidimensional and does not depend solely on penetration. Foreplay, touch, and non-penetrative forms of intimacy can be equally if not more important in fostering closeness. Studies show that couples who diversify their sexual activities tend to report higher satisfaction, particularly when anatomy presents physical challenges. In this sense, adaptability is more valuable than size. Emotional connection further shapes how intimacy is experienced. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, is released during affectionate interactions such as kissing, cuddling, or gentle touch. These neurochemical processes strengthen attachment and feelings of love, contributing to satisfaction levels beyond the purely physical act. The quality of emotional intimacy often predicts long-term relational happiness more strongly than frequency of sex or size differences. While variations in size can require adaptation, for example, experimenting with positions, using lubrication, or employing supportive devices, these adjustments are typically straightforward when partners approach them with patience and cooperation. For most couples, these adaptations become a natural part of exploring their relationship rather than an obstacle. Taken together, the evidence dispels the idea that bigger is inherently better. Satisfaction is not determined by centimeters but by qualities that nurture trust, empathy, and creativity. Size may affect the mechanics of intimacy, but it does not dictate whether an experience is pleasurable, meaningful, or fulfilling. In fact, focusing too much on size can distract from what truly matters: connection, communication, and care. Part 6. Global variations in size. Although averages reveal that most men worldwide fall within a relatively narrow range, research has documented some regional variations in penis size. These differences, while often exaggerated in popular media, provide insight into human diversity across continents. Importantly, scientists emphasize that all averages remain within the healthy functional range, meaning that variation has little to no impact on fertility or sexual performance. Africa is often reported as having the highest averages, with erect lengths commonly measured between 15 and 16 centimeters. These findings come from surveys and small-scale clinical studies, though experts caution that sampling bias can affect results. Nonetheless, the consistency of higher than global averages has been noted across multiple studies. Europe presents a moderate range, with averages between 13 and 14.5 centimeters. Within the continent, variations exist. Countries like France, Italy, and Germany often report slightly higher numbers than the global average, while others remain closer to the lower end of the spectrum. These differences, however, are small in biological terms and often within a margin of 1 centimeter. The Americas show diverse outcomes. North America typically aligns with the European averages, around 13 to 15 centimeters, while studies in South America report similar or slightly higher values depending on the country. The variation reflects both genetic diversity and methodological differences in measurement. Asia tends to report lower averages, generally between 11 and 13 centimeters. This has often been sensationalized in media, but scientifically, these measurements are still well within the normal and functional range. Experts emphasize that lower averages do not equate to inadequacy or reduced sexual function. Fertility rates, relationship satisfaction, and overall health remain unaffected by regional averages. Oceania, including Australia and surrounding regions, typically mirrors European trends, with averages between 13 and 14 centimeters. Again, variation across studies is minor, and the global theme of clustering around the mid-teens remains consistent. While these geographic patterns are interesting, it is important to recognize the limitations of the data. Many studies rely on self-reporting, which can be influenced by exaggeration or cultural expectations. Clinical measurements provide more reliable results, but they are often limited to smaller sample sizes. Therefore, while regional averages offer a broad picture, they should not be taken as precise indicators of population-level differences. The broader takeaway is that human anatomy is naturally diverse, and variation across regions reflects genetic, environmental, and methodological factors rather than meaningful functional differences. Whether the average is 11 or 16 centimeters, the vast majority of men fall within a range that supports healthy sexual relationships and reproductive potential. Ultimately, while media may sensationalize global comparisons, science brings perspective. Size differences between continents are relatively small and biologically insignificant. What matters far more is recognizing that diversity is normal and that intimacy depends on human connection rather than statistics. Story: does bigger really mean better? The tale of Daniel the developer. Daniel was a 32-year-old software engineer from Berlin. By day, he wrote elegant lines of code that powered banking systems. By night, he debugged his own life, a task far trickier than fixing Java errors. Daniel had always carried a peculiar reputation, one that had nothing to do with programming. Among his circle of friends, he was whispered about as having a giant advantage, though he never asked for this kind of spotlight. At first, he thought this reputation might be like running the latest, most powerful processor, fast, impressive, envied. Yet, as Daniel quickly discovered, having hardware that exceeded normal specifications came with compatibility issues. Imagine plugging a massive graphics card into a tiny laptop. It doesn't fit, the fan overheats, and suddenly you realize more power isn't always practical. In university, Daniel's classmates teased him in locker rooms, as if he were some mythical character. Instead of feeling flattered, he often wished for invisibility. Being reduced to one exaggerated trait was like having your LinkedIn profile reduced to a single line. Knows how to Google things. Sure, technically true, but far from the whole story. When Daniel began dating, the reality of his extra-large system requirements became clearer. Some encounters felt more like a software crash than a smooth user experience. Once, things ended with an emergency visit to the clinic, leaving him mortified. From that point on, he treated intimacy like handling sensitive code, full of caution, testing, and thorough documentation. Over time, he learned that communication mattered far more than configuration. He sat down with partners and, instead of letting surprises derail the connection, he gave them a gentle release note about his situation. Awkward at first, yes, but better than a failed deployment later. Partners who appreciated honesty often responded with relief. Realizing that Daniel wasn't trying to perform some superhero act, he just wanted both sides to enjoy the project. Daniel also discovered the power of creative problem solving. Not every function needed to run in full screen mode. Foreplay, playfulness, and emotional intimacy often produced the most satisfying results. Like optimizing code, efficiency and elegance mattered more than sheer size. Ironically, Daniel sometimes longed to be average. It would have meant fewer stares, fewer jokes, and less pressure to perform in ways shaped by films and myths. But as he matured, he realized the real lesson: better is not bigger, better is balanced. Just as software isn't judged only by the number of lines, but by its stability and usability, intimacy thrives on trust, creativity, and connection. Now in his 30s, Daniel laughs at the old stereotypes. People think I'm lucky, he tells his friends, but sometimes it's like carrying around a server rack when all you need is a laptop. His friends laugh, but Daniel's point is serious. The secret isn't about extraordinary hardware. It's about whether two people can sync, debug together, and enjoy the experience. And so Daniel's story answers the timeless question with humor and honesty. Bigger may grab attention, but it doesn't guarantee happiness. In love, just like in software engineering, compatibility will always matter more than size. Conclusion: does bigger really mean better? After examining scientific evidence, cultural perceptions, and real-life experiences, the answer becomes clear. Bigger does not necessarily mean better. Size is only one variable within the complex equation of human intimacy and sexual fulfillment. It may draw attention or curiosity, but it is far from the defining factor in satisfaction or relationship quality. Medical data consistently shows that most men fall within a normal range of 13 to 15 centimeters when erect. Variations between continents exist but are modest and biologically insignificant. At the extremes, whether smaller than average or exceptionally large, only a small minority of men are represented. And both ends of the spectrum come with unique challenges. This reality highlights that size is simply a natural aspect of human diversity rather than a universal marker of masculinity or sexual ability. What truly determines satisfaction is not centimeters but communication, consent, and emotional connection. A fulfilling sexual experience occurs when both partners feel safe, respected, and free to express their needs. Even when differences in size require adaptation, couples who approach intimacy with patience and creativity are more likely to enjoy meaningful and pleasurable experiences. Techniques such as focusing on foreplay, exploring diverse forms of intimacy, and using supportive tools when necessary all demonstrate that adaptability matters more than anatomy. Focusing too heavily on size risks overshadowing what is most important. A man with average dimensions who is attentive, empathetic, and skilled in fostering closeness can create a far deeper sense of fulfillment than size alone could ever provide. Conversely, without respect, communication, and genuine care. Even the most impressive measurements cannot guarantee happiness in a relationship. On a broader social level, debunking the myth of bigger is better can ease unnecessary anxieties and reduce feelings of inadequacy. Cultural messages often exaggerate size as the ultimate symbol of virility, but shifting the narrative toward connection and compatibility encourages healthier expectations. This perspective allows men to embrace their bodies without fear of judgment and promotes more honest, constructive conversations about sexual well-being. In conclusion, while size may influence certain mechanics of intimacy, it does not dictate the quality of a relationship or the depth of sexual fulfillment. Intimacy is a multifaceted experience, shaped by trust, respect, and emotional resonance, where size plays only a minor role. The true secret to satisfaction lies in building connection, nurturing mutual respect, and meeting each other's needs with care. Ultimately, the measure of happiness is not written in numbers but in the closeness and understanding two people share. Recognizing this truth allows us to move beyond myths, release unhelpful comparisons, and embrace a healthier, more holistic view of sexuality and human connection. Thank you for listening until the very end. If today's story has gently stirred your heart, whether through an old memory, a present feeling, or something never spoken into words, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Intimate wisdom is where we come together to touch the hidden corners of love, affection, and sexuality, things that may seem private, yet are in fact the very core of happiness. I wish you to always love deeply, live truthfully, and find yourself in every glance, every touch, and every trembling heartbeat. Affectionate greetings.